I'm Rebecca Wright. I'm a professor of computer science here at Barnard College. I chair the computer science department, which I founded as a program about 5 years ago. We became a department this year. And I also direct the Vagelos Computational Science Center and work on research in privacy, security, and computing education.
Would you say you are a cryptographer or more on the mathematician side?
I would say applied cryptography is where most of my cryptographic research has been, and have moved over the years even maybe into more security and privacy, always looking to take kind of a foundational theoretical approach, but very much motivated by real-world problems and how privacy, things like accountability, fit in society and what people think about them when they think about those concepts.
Maybe you already have something to say about your idea around post-quantum cryptography, and we can also just get in the subject right away.
We know that it's now a possibility that a quantum computer could be built at the scale that would allow it to break traditional encryption systems such as RSA, DSA that we've been using, that are used in banking, are used in communications, and so. Obviously, it's very important that before that becomes a reality, ideally well before that becomes a reality, new encryption schemes are developed and put into place that are resistant to the kinds of attacks that those computers could carry out.
This is a question I make for everyone, and everyone has a different opinion or different kind of ranges. When do you expect this is going to happen?
I'm not sure I can even predict. I think if I had predicted when we would get to where we are now, I would have gotten that wrong. I think there were real physical challenges to overcome, and the physicists have been working hard on sort of making sure they're, limiting the errors and maintaining coherence. And I think they made really pretty exceptional progress, but they made, there may be limits that they're going to hit that they can't overcome. And so it could really be, in the next 10 years, it could be never.
Even never, you think? Maybe.
Possibly.
Possibly. Well, I make a question that is more on the math side before getting to post-quantum cryptography and so on, just because we are talking about breakthrough, right? Mm-hmm. Because after all, this breakthrough can happen in physics, in computing, mm-hmm. but also in math. Mm-hmm. Is there any chance that by keeping researching and investing in quantum research, let's say, we discover also another type of math, or actually another type of solutions to resolve this famous equation of P equal NP? And that can happen anytime, right? Because it's just an assumption. Is that correct?
Correct. I think there's been really sort of interesting progress from exactly what you say, sort of a mix of physics and mathematics and computing that have allowed progress towards understanding how one might approach the P equals NP question in ways that were sort of new and creative and yielded better understanding around that and related questions in a way that there really hadn't been progress for quite some time. So, and that's how research works. I mean, whether it's research in understanding the fundamentals of the mathematics, in understanding encryption, understanding algorithms, and that's how research works, right? You work on it, you make advances, but sometimes there's sort of sparks of interest or sparks of creativity that can really enable leaps of various kinds.
And how bad would be if tomorrow that discovery is made?
Tomorrow would be a little soon.
It'd be crazy.
Yeah. So, I mean, tying it back, like let's say it does hold that P is different from NP, and that it does hold that some of these assumptions that crypto schemes are based on today do hold against classical computers. If we know the timeline, like if you were to tell me there will be, 2 years from today, there will be an algorithm that will be able to break, a particular crypto system. Not only would you want to make sure you're not using that crypto system in 2 years, you actually would want to stop using it today for anything that will still be valuable in 2 years.
Do you think maybe we relied too much on that simple mathematical assumption? Because there is so much of cryptography that actually is the whole internet and the whole economy and all the world transportation security is based on that simple mathematical equation at these days.
Sure. I mean, I think some of it is practicalities, right? There is information theoretically secure cryptography, and so the basis of that is the so-called one-time pad, right? You might know about these code books from World War II or something, and so at its heart, the one-time pad is you use for every bit of a message you want to send, you have to use a bit of key material, and so. It's very inefficient. You have to decide in advance while we're in a secure place. We have to share enough key for all the messages we're going to want to send once we're apart. With public key cryptography, or even with symmetric encryption and block ciphers, what you get and what you are trying to get is you have some relatively short key material that has to be decided on in a secure way, and then you can use that indefinitely to communicate. And that efficiency that you get is part of what enabled this world of e-commerce and telecommunications and all of that. It's much more feasible than a world where you'd need to be sort of having equal key length to message length.
Yeah, it was efficient, was convenient, was safe enough.
Yes.
But then it also been 50 years and everything has been built on it. And then that's why now people are not panicking yet, but it's kind of like a tricky situation because if that fail, everything fail, right? And everything is up for grab. And so that's why also there is all this post-quantum cryptography research effort. And although we don't know yet, because the public encryption is not broken yet, and post-quantum cryptography is not been implemented yet. I mean, it has been implemented in some parts, I heard. But anyway, maybe you want to tell me more about what you know about NIST and the post-quantum cryptography they developed?
Yeah, I mean, so I really view the work that NIST has done as a big success story. Not complete; it's an ongoing process. But the fact that NIST started, I think, about 8 years ago, to reach out to the public research community for ideas on crypto systems that would work against an adversary with access to a quantum computer. And then there was a long process of both NIST researchers and the public research ecosystem of having solutions proposed, having them looked at by the community. In some cases, some were found to have flaws. Others were found to seem to withstand. Flaws sometimes can be fixed, sometimes not so clear. And so, I think, to me, this process leveraged both stamp of approval from the U.S. government and some resources from the U.S. government, but even more broadly, the whole, not just national, not just U.S., but international research community to bring to bear their best ideas and open them up to scrutiny by others. And that is the process on which we build some trust in these mathematical assumptions over time.
However, what I am also investigating with this documentary is that beyond NIST, we need some international coordination.
For sure.
And also, this is not going to be easy task because, I mean, the RSA was safe for a long time also because there were many other attempts that failed before. And so probably what NIST found out so far is safe, but we don't know for how long. Maybe 1 year is not enough. And also the other thing that NIST didn't consider, or maybe they considered but wasn't really part of what their work, and it's not part of their work for obvious reasons, is the time to implement all this post-quantum cryptography, implementing it in hardware, in the softwares, in the many protocols, in the many algorithms out there. And we know how many devices there are in these days. So it's going to take other 5-10 years to upgrade.
That's right. I mean, both sort of implementation in terms of reference implementation or, particular, like just making sure it's sort of well understood how to do it on particular kinds of hardware efficiently and things like that, but then also adoption, like actually having vendors adopt it, big companies adopt it, some of which is starting to happen. I think Google and some other companies are already using these methods, but I think really getting it widely out there and getting out of circulation, the methods that aren't resistant to quantum computers, you're right, is something that really will take a long time. And so, again, coming back to this idea of you need to be enough in advance of the actual deployment by an adversary of a quantum computer that would be able to break these crypto systems. And you need to go back far enough that, you don't, even before that, you don't have devices that are still in use with the old systems. You don't have encrypted data that could have been harvested that's still useful. So sure, this, if this were to happen tomorrow, that a quantum computer, and maybe it has or did or will, and we wouldn't even know necessarily right away. So, there's definitely a risk. I think the fact that the research community and that NIST were willing to put in the effort to start thinking about what would those solutions look like, these new crypto systems look like, as far back as 8 years ago, when a lot of people were saying a quantum computer will never be built that could actually do this. I do think that was really important, and that's why I do view it as a success story. Because I think if we were waiting until today to start, we'd be at even more risk. I think there's still a risk even now, but I think we're in much better position. And then I do think there needs to be, not just in the US, but internationally, a real push for companies, for vendors, for implementers of any kind to make sure they are using these algorithms and phasing out the older ones.
Yeah, I even heard that in Japan there is a post-quantum cryptography research effort.
Okay,
That means that is people are talking about it maybe in little pockets. And I wonder if you think about any organization that could bring everyone together, or also just setting some standards that are internationally accepted, maybe doing some policy lobbies. And I know that you were associated to the AEEE, but that is more technical. Maybe that could be one, right? Or
international harmonization of standards is hard. I think the US has had somewhat of a leading role over the years. I think the EU, especially kind of in the policy space, has had a leading role around privacy, and then questions of trust as well, right? And this comes up with encryption standards. It has come up before, and it will continue to come up, of if one country would worry that another country picked something as a standard or parameters for the standard because they had special information that would allow that country to have some kind of backdoor or way to break it, but that they didn't think would be widely known. So I think there are always trust issues between countries, and then there might be just other, philosophical or cultural issues. One culture may be more put more focus on efficiency, another more on safety, for example. So, so I think it is a challenge, or different levels of privacy, or individual versus societal and collective.
What we investigate with this documentary as well, the ethics of post-quantum cryptography, actually almost like the ethics of post-cryptography, since we don't know for how long it will hold. And one of those questions within the ethics is the ownership and also equality, of course. And so the danger that maybe Google is going to break public key cryptography, and they come up with a private network that's post-quantum, but they make it safe for only some people, or they try to patent, or they charge people to be safe. And in the in world we live today is actually not that impossible scenario. Do you have any comments about this idea of ownership and equity in the cybersecurity space? I don't know, probably.
I think I'm probably an idealist on this, right? So I definitely believe in the value of open research and having an open research community, an international open research community. I think that is what allows the best scientific advances. And I think ultimately, if we don't have the science to rely on, everyone is at risk. Now, why do I say that's idealist? Because I think there is obviously a role for companies, large companies, as well as other companies, to make sure these technologies are implemented and get out to the public for people to use them. And companies are generally in the business of trying to make money.
Going back to the very foundation of cryptography again, so how everything is based on public key cryptography, that the keys are made by factoring two large prime numbers, and apparently, or at least we assume, there is no other ways to do the reverse engineering of that assumption, and so until then everything is safe. But that is also because we have been studying math, and we are in a school of math actually, and this is also some more scientific questions that until we keep researching on the same thing that is given, that is an assumption, there are no discoveries that are made because we just prove what is already proved. And actually also in the history of scientific revolution, this has been said and done many times. And then there is this big breakthrough, and then everything that was known before needs to be reconsidered. They say, the historian in the history of science, they say that's also because the educational institutions are not allowing enough creativity, imagination, experimentation to have more breakthrough. And I know this is a very particular thing also in math. So math, of course, doesn't really allow much creativity or imagination. Or that's actually part of the question, maybe you can tell me. And if that you think is also because maybe the institutions themselves have they don't open up to other people outside of the fields. And then it goes to gender, it goes to equality, ethnicity or multicultural perception of what is even math, right? And so maybe we have that assumption just because we built all our institutions and our knowledge around math in a certain way that it doesn't allow actually to make those discoveries.
Right. I mean, let me maybe relate it to computer science, since that's my own field. I think what you're getting at is something I very much believe in, which is that having a diverse set of people from a diverse set of backgrounds and genders, cultures, ethnicities, race, just having people come in with different perspectives is going to get you the best results. So absolutely, I mean, something that we believe in very deeply here at Barnard is the importance of education for women, which at the time Barnard was founded was a radical idea. Now it's not such a radical idea, but still important. And in computing, women are still underrepresented, so bringing in more women, I think, is a very exciting part of what I get to do here. And I do think also thinking about computer science, mathematics, and the sciences as a creative endeavor is also really important. And I think that that's something that actually many of us do think, and I think some of the breakthroughs we've seen, and we've had many breakthroughs in computing and mathematics in the sciences, come from approaching it as a creative endeavor and looking to both take the methodical steps needed to have strong science, but having a sort of a fertile ground for those creative leaps. So I'm a big believer in science as a creative endeavor.
The current administration is cutting funding in academia, in research, scientific research, but also I heard specifically in cybersecurity, there was an organization in particular that was defunded.
That's right.
What really scares me in this quantum world is that then the public encryption can be really broken.
Yes.
And there is no much effort to fix it, to
Right.
come up with post-quantum cryptography, and we're going to be in a very different world at that point.
Yeah.
And I think actually that's what, after all these, the world is going toward that direction, because disruption actually makes society weaker, and so it's easier to control, which is counterintuitive, but at this point, the society is so complex that probably is really what is going to be the future, which is like reversing everything we have done so far to get to a complex society that was manageable. But now at this point, it is manageable, but it's not that convenient, and there is so much potential for disruption that, anyway, we live in another world.
Yeah.
If it's in the hands of an authoritarian government, it's not just about the money.
That's right. That's right. So, I think the hope is that we have a crypto ecosystem where everyone has access to technology and tools that protect themselves. We want to allow people to use these tools to protect themselves. They can also be used to protect bad actors who are trying to do bad things, and this is where I'm thinking of criminal behavior, say, child pornographers hiding behind anonymity. And so all cryptography sort of faces this dilemma between wanting to allow people to hide the things that should be secret, their bank account numbers, protect their identity, allow them to have personal and private conversations, medical information, et cetera. But these tools always can then also be used in these other ways. And so that's a tension that happens in the cryptography and privacy space, and could potentially happen, or will continue to happen in a post-quantum cryptography space. In general, attempts to weaken the cryptography by providing backdoors that are supposed to be usable by law enforcement in appropriate cases can lead to just weakening the cryptography for everyone. And so, in some sense, a lot of the law enforcement has to sit outside of the cryptography using other traditional methods of law enforcement. And so that will continue to be true in this space as well. It's an added layer of complication, I think, to the international standardization piece as well.
Yeah, I find it interesting point. I am also in my own work research about the accountability, transparency, and anonymity, and I find it particularly interesting today in the cryptocurrency world, where there is so much happening, and you can all look at that, and so much corruption is happening right now, and still people would defend it because of it needs to be private communication, but not. And then there's the question: do we open those channels? Do we make those transfer transparent, or we work on the regulation of the financial market,
right? Which
anyway is missing.
That's
also
right. That's right. And I think ideally, you do a little bit of both, right? You improve regulation to something that makes sense and is workable, and you also look to the technology piece. And so, cryptocurrency examples, the idea that the mathematics will build in protection against double spending. I'm thinking back to David Chaum's work and some of the earliest eCash proposals, right? If you spend a coin once, the mathematics and the encryption protect your identity. If you spend a coin twice, then mathematically it sort of unlocks the ability to find the identity of the person. And so that's sort of a simple example of how you can build in some kinds of protection, and this is true even in the examples I was giving with things like known inappropriate content, right? You can leverage the mathematics to provide particular properties that allow certain kinds of bad behavior to be detectable or enable some kind of identification or other kinds of properties that allow law enforcement to then take over and do its job better from there. So that's one kind of example. of how you can sort of have strive to have good cryptographic properties that help to enable accountability or law enforcement or detection or whatever else in certain cases without providing a more general backdoor.